Remember The Crow? The 1994 movie famous for its gothic imagery and infamous for its status as the last vehicle of rising star Brandon Lee, the son of Bruce Lee, who tragically died during filming? Remember how it became a cult classic over the years? Garnering fans of the heavy Gotham inspired atmosphere and equally as heavy makeup and leather ensemble paraded around to some of the coolest, darkest alternative rock of the time? Well, somebody remembered and decided that the best way to pay such a venerable and well loved piece of art respect was to make a shallow, neutered, tonally inconsistent, repulsive mess of a film that made me feel sicker than something my dog shat out after scarfing down a plate load of greasy Thanksgiving offal dripping with gravy while no one was looking. And my dog's been dead for 20 years. How is that relevant? I don't know. But to call the latest Crow film, otherwise known as How Hard Can a Pathetic Loser Simp for an Ugly, Unsympathetic, Strung Out Crackhead, an insult to every idea put to paper in the wake of comic creator James O'Barr's own personal tragedy, and brought to life by a visionary director, a focused crew, and a lovable cast of characters played by a group of accomplished actors, would be the understatement of the last 10 years, or whenever this DEI bullshit blew up. Whereas the original movie understood the art of brevity, tragic behind the scenes circumstances notwithstanding, picking up when our main character has already been killed and soon rises from the grave to embark upon a quest of supernatural vengeance, this latest effort takes 40 minutes. 40 fucking minutes of the most painstaking, terribly acted, stomach churning, disingenuous, pitiful backstory and dry humping sequences that the director and writers seemed to confuse for true love before getting to the impetus for the real film we all came to see. It's 40 minutes of our hero Eric playing the weakest, most dislikable pussy you have seen on film in a good while. He stumbles about with no agency whatsoever, fawning over a repulsive, dirty, coke-addled druggie who drives every decision and dictates pretty much every action our main character takes. And I guess the movie's set in the near future, because a good chunk of the intro takes place in the prison rehab center where every man identifies as a woman to escape real jail time with dudes who will just as soon violate their darkest orifices as look at them. Breaking out of prison? It's all about Sarah. Eric just goes along with it to help her out. Hiding away with Sarah in a friend's apartment? Her idea. Eric just goes along with it. Making music? Sarah again. And she's much better at it than Eric is. Never mind that Eric Draven in the first film was a fucking rock star.
Tell them Eric Draven sends his regards.
Jumping off a bridge? Sarah's idea again. They don't actually do it, but Eric's ready to follow her over the edge. The entire impetus for the movie, the source of conflict and the main driver of events, it's all related to Sarah. Eric is just there to avenge her and bring her back to life while sacrificing and condemning himself to the deepest, most unimaginable pit of hell based on the phoniest, most unbelievable love scenes put to film. This matchup right here is about as believable as it is in the movie. Remember, guys, lust does not equal love.
No, of course not. Strictly professional.
Wonderful.
Great.
Something I think the writers need to learn, because this is not a convincing love story, no matter how hard they tried to push it in stale montages with a cast of background nobodies who have no dialogue and next to no interaction with our main characters before they die. Yet we're supposed to believe they're such good friends with Eric when he needs some help. The supporting characters in this movie are barely there. There's no sympathetic youngster, there's no cop friend, let alone any character as wonderfully portrayed by someone as charismatic as Ernie Hudson. Hell, there's no Devil's Night even.
Devil's Night is upon us again. So we throw a little party, start a bunch of fires, make a little profit.
The main antagonist, Vincent Rogue, is equally as underwhelming. He's played by the dude from Yellowstone, and you'd be forgiven if you thought they were the same character, because he plays them in almost the exact same way. Vincent is kind of a vampire type character, someone who's made a pact with the devil for immortality as long as he keeps sending souls to hell, especially the souls of innocents. He has the Bene Gesserit power of the voice and can tell people to kill themselves or others with a whisper in the ear. Problem is that he never feels threatening or particularly unhinged, not like Michael Wincott's wonderfully mad top dollar in the original.
Fuck's sakes, die, will you? Give me that thing.
Maybe it's down to some serious miscasting. I mean, who would you feel more threatened by? Oh, and you might think that the movie improves after Eric and Sarah finally die. But you'd be wrong. The death of Sarah in the 1994 original was a brutal, callous, and sexually depraved degradation of a human being before ending in a cold blooded murder. The killers made themselves known with their particular behaviors and foibles. They made it personal. And when Eric rises from the grave, it's immediately clear who he wants to go after and why. They're given names and a little bit of identity, so it's satisfying when he hunts these animals down and ends them in gloriously violent fashion. In the 2024 version, the killers come out of nowhere, get the jump on our characters, and suffocate Eric and Sarah simultaneously. We don't know anything about them, there's no personalized brutality to make their behavior stick out in your head, or Eric's for that matter, other than being suffocated with a bag, which is plenty nasty enough. But it lacks the motivation for the intimate hatred of each and every murderer. They're just doing the bidding of their boss in the most efficient manner. Nothing personal. When Eric wakes up in the world between worlds and everything is spelled out to him in painfully upfront dialogue by a mysterious man with a beard, we learn that Sarah's soul is going to hell because, Vincent. But Eric gets the chance to put all the bad things right by living again as a pseudo immortal avenging angel, as long as his love remains pure. You know, that love we were supposed to buy into in those disgustingly shallow montages. As an immortal Avenger, is Eric any more capable or confident than he was before, when he was cowering in corners and simping for his crackhead?
I'm gonna kill them. Every single one of them.
Hell no. This Eric is just as weak and pathetic as before, acting scared and uncertain, stumbling into the enemies he's supposed to kill, and awkwardly dispatching them before running away in fear, all while set to some of the worst background music imaginable, with lilting tones and warblings about love and loss in what amounts to a crime in a Crow movie.
Broken promises take flight.
Man, don't do that! You nearly gave me a fucking heart attack.
Boy, I miss the 90s. Half the time, the baddies are tracking him down rather than the other way around. Eric's a pathetic character, and that doesn't change until he sees the video that Vincent would kill to have and that set the whole movie into motion. In the video, Vincent uses the voice on Sarah, and she kills a woman at his bidding. Despite being told by a character that Vincent's voice can make people do things, and seeing it happen directly in the video, Eric's reaction is to doubt Sarah, and therefore his love for her isn't unwavering anymore. Eric conveniently gets blasted in the stomach with a shotgun and falls back into the world between worlds, where he's told he's failed. Too bad, so sad, go die now. Don't forget, this film is about how much a man can sacrifice for an undeserving, unlikable, dirty ass druggie who he has had a few nights of lustful encounters with and confused his heart on for true love.
Jimmy, there's nothing weird about random erections. Almost every boy goes through a phase where his penis becomes hard for no particular reason. It's just part of growing up.
In exchange for Sarah's life, Eric sacrifices his soul to the worst hell ever for the power of the crow, or something like that. Crows barely factor into the movie at all, really. When Eric comes back with his new powers, it's as tonally consistent as a long haul trucker at a pit stop eating an extra large helping of Mama's Prairie Dog chili on the 12th hour into a 16-hour trip. Suddenly, Eric is not only self-assured, but a total badass who doesn't give a fuck about anything. His powers don't just change, his entire attitude changes too, and it's also the first time we see the crow makeup. He takes the fight to an opera house where most of the villains are, and it's like a totally different director shot this scene. It's extremely graphic, with creative kills and blood flying everywhere. It's what I wanted all along, the killing and violence, and then some. But it's set to this incredibly out-of-place ballet music throughout that doesn't gel with the ultraviolence unfolding on the screen at all. It's too little, too late, and not at all consistent with Eric's character up to this point. And when he's done at the opera house, it's back to the same old Eric again, with a lame and anticlimactic confrontation with Vincent that's slow-paced and barely worth mentioning. In exchange for his efforts, he gets to go to hell. And that paradigm of virtue, Sarah, gets a new lease on life. I couldn't think of a more deserving person. There is no comparison to the 1994 Crow. It was a tighter, more endearing, sort of classic ghost story about a spiritual avenger. This is a love must be pure story. Like some kind of fairy tale bullshit. The opera scene, despite the terrible music choice, was so over the top it felt like it belonged in a different movie. The action was finally exciting and visceral, although it did feel a bit like a discount John Wick moment. But one good scene in a sea of shit does not a decent movie make. This was garbage, pure and simple. The Crow poster that looked so cool and hinted at the supernatural never happens. You never get a scene like that, and they hardly lean into supernatural powers at all, let alone crows. The 1994 version showed a couple powers Eric had, like seeing through the eyes of a crow like a drone, or that his immortal life was linked to the crow. But there's nothing at all like that in this version. The dialogue is painfully inept and obvious. Eric is told exactly what his powers are, what his limitations are, and what he needs to do. How the hell did writers figure out the basics of show don't tell in the 90s, but they've forgotten it entirely in the 2020s? You know the best thing about the 90s movie? They skipped all the lame ass romantic bullshit and got to the revenge right off the bat. No explanation required except for a quick narration at the beginning. Boom, Eric Draven comes out of the ground a year later to exact his revenge, with the help of the coolest cop since Jim Gordon and a plucky kid from a rough neighborhood who's surprisingly likable for a child actor. There's a reason why The Crow with Brandon Lee became a cult classic. This movie will be forgotten before the week's over, and good riddance. I'd give it a point for the epic opera slaughter, but damn, where were you for the rest of this soiled diaper of a film? If you want something entertaining to watch in this genre, watch The Crow with Brandon Lee. Don't waste your time on this slop. Sorry, Bill. I love your performances normally, but you've been done dirty here. I think you should stick to Clowns from Outer Space.
No one wants to play with the clown anymore.
I give this a 2 out of 10. It's infuriating trash, best not consumed by human eyes. And remember, he's willing to go to the worst kind of hell for this woman.